Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Courtney Honeycutt. I am the advisor for pre-graduate school students. I work with the Office of Academic and Advising Services. And since we have kind of a small group logged in with us here today, you all feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question while I'm presenting if you would like. I don't mind the interruptions. Um, I'll try and give some pauses so that you have a time to ask a question if you would like. Otherwise, I will give you more space to ask questions at the end. So I'm going to talk to you today about how to write your personal statement. To start off, I want to say that the personal statement is very different from anything you've been asked to write up until this point, unless you've already written a personal statement. And what's more is that we're not really used to talking about ourselves in the way you have to when you write a personal statement. It's very different from academic writing in the way you're trained to write academically. So it can be helpful to get some information, some feedback on how to even start that writing essay. So what is a personal statement? It's an opportunity for you to reflect on your experiences and determine what has been meaningful to you. And it offers a chance for admissions officers or whoever's looking at your personal statement to get to know more about you, to know what your goals are, your motivations, and you can learn these things about yourself as well through the process of writing a personal statement, which is incredibly important if you're doing something like going to graduate school or applying for a fellowship in a specific area of study. You want to know why you want to be there, because if you don't know, the people trying to just determine if you're a good candidate are also not going to know. So it can be a good reflective exercise. A personal statement is not a resume in prose, and it's not a cover letter. You don't want to, write out in sentence form all the experiences you've had or all the projects you've done, and you're not writing a very formal sort of caged letter like with a cover letter. What it is a short essay that allows you to describe the events and opportunities, the obstacles that have shaped your attitude, your interests, your goals, all of the things behind those little bullet points on the resume, or even things that aren't on the resume because they don't fit there. The personal statement is the place for those kinds of things. So your personal statement, your essay is going to be evaluated as a professional writing sample in addition to being used to learn more about you. So you want to make sure you're using proper grammar, spelling, you're communicating clearly, your writing is clear and concise, and that you have strong organization. Organization is particularly important for the personal statements because whatever you're applying to, those people are going to be reading hundreds, if not in some cases thousands of personal statements. So the more organized you are, the easier it is for the reader to pick out the most important parts of your statement and to be able to use those to understand who you are. If you're kind of all over the place and they have to try and infer what your meaning is or what your goal is, you're going to be a little bit behind because they don't have time to do all those inferences. So you be organized and almost spell it out for your reader, make it easy on them. Sometimes your personal statement essay you'll be given a prompt or a few questions to answer in the course of a personal statement. 9 times out of 10, it's not any different from any other personal statement. They might just want a few particulars included or want you to address certain questions. And you must always follow the character, word, or page limits. I've heard professors who, if they have a one-page limit, they will not read an extra word on the second page. They'll just stop in the middle. So you can't fudge that a little bit. You can't go past it. That's an easy reason to dock points off someone or to just stop reading. So make sure you follow those limitations if there are any. If there aren't any character or page limits or anything like that, a good rule of thumb is 1 to maybe 2 pages, single spaced. So what is your main message when you're writing your personal statement? That's kind of one of the first questions you want to ask yourself. Your main message should be that your reasons for wanting to study blank or participate in whatever program are mature, developed, and thoughtful. You can't just want to go to MIT for grad school because it sounds cool, right? Or you can't want to be a doctor because everyone in your family was a doctor. You need to have something that you have really thought about and reflected on, and you have good reasons for wanting to do it. I've always wanted to be a fireman since I was a kid. Isn't going to cut it here. So make sure you have really thought about what it is you're wanting to do and why. You also want to show that you have the skills and preparation to be successful. And this does not mean saying, I have good interpersonal communication skills and I'm skilled in doing research and I am an excellent public speaker. Show, not tell. Instead of saying that you have strong interpersonal communication skills, talk about an experience where you had to communicate well with others in order to have a project be successful or to be successful in an internship, anything like that. So the more specific you are, the better. Any questions so far? There are some core components to your essay. Like I said, you want to have your goals clearly stated. If I get to halfway down your personal statement and I don't realize you're applying for a graduate program or that you want to get your master's or that you're applying to be a Fulbright, then you probably missed the mark a little bit there, especially when you're at a one-page essay. You don't want to get halfway through it before you realize why this person's writing the essay. So make sure you include that early on. You want to have your motivations and reasons for pursuing the field clearly stated. You don't dance around the subject. Just go ahead and straight out say it. Be bold. I want to study biochem medical engineering because I want to be able to develop, high-end technology to help people be more mobile. Whatever it is, just state it. Even if it's personal, perhaps especially if it's personal. If your motivation for pursuing this field started with your own experiences or experiences of someone close to you, if you feel passionate enough about that, you can absolutely share it in the personal statement, because again, this is about who you are and how you fit into this area that you want to study. So don't be afraid to include those things. If you're worried about whether you're sharing too much or too little, or you don't want to sound a certain kind of way, my encouragement to you is to write it as openly as you can at first and then get feedback as to whether or not you should narrow it down. It's always easier to narrow something down than it is to have someone expand on it. You always want to use specific and detailed examples. And this is kind of what I said with not saying I am skilled at research topics or research methods. You want to talk about how you have conducted research and the methods that you've used. So avoid general statements. If you're applying to several programs or scholarships and there's something in particular that has led you to apply to that program, maybe they have a specialized engagement program for their graduate students, maybe they have specific faculty studying what exactly you want to study and you want to work with them, this is a good place to talk about that, because you're not just saying that you're qualified for this program, you're also trying to tell them why this program will be a good fit for you and how you will help contribute to the success of the program. So there's a little bit of give and take here, so be sure to address those reasons if you have them. Don't make them up though. If you don't have them, that's okay. You can still write the personal statement without it. But if there's a specific reason, go into that. And again, I can't stress this enough, just make sure you're reflecting on the deeper meaning to why you're doing things. You can't just want to get, it's just like with undergrad. You don't want to get a bachelor's to get a job. That's not going to help. That's not enough of a reason. So make sure you ask yourself why a few times to see if you can get to the deeper reason as to why you're really doing what you're doing. So this is a document available on our website. That's aas.mercer.edu. This is something that's helpful to just sort of do some brainstorming about your personal statement. If you don't know what ways to describe yourself, which is possible, like I said, we don't write about ourselves often, ask some people about what your strengths are, what words they would use to describe you. Ask your professors how they would describe your work or your passion for the profession. What about you will make you successful? Are you competitive? Are you very detail oriented? Think of these kinds of things and have them ready for inserting them into your personal essay. That way you're not struggling to find the words or the phrases once you get into it. Just do some brainstorming ahead of time. So like I said, organization is key. So make sure before you even start writing, get organized. I know a lot of people like to skip the outline or not do it at all, but I highly, highly encourage you to do some form of organization before you get started. The way I like to explain organization for this essay is to hail all the way back to, like middle school writing classes. You want an introduction paragraph 2 to 3 body paragraphs, and a concluding paragraph. And your introductory paragraph is going to have your purpose statement or your goal statement. It's going to have the general idea of what you're going to be talking about for the rest of the essay. Sometimes you break this down into saying there will be 3 sentences in your introductory paragraph, and those 3 sentences will be the themes of your 3 body paragraphs. And those, they'll be expanded on in the body paragraphs. And you want to outline the topic. Your body paragraphs, you want to make sure that you transition between them. You don't want it to be like a stark distinction from going to talking about one thing to the next. If you can connect them at the end of each paragraph or the beginning of the next to your overall goals, it'll help your essay flow better and keep the reader engaged, spending more time reviewing what you're actually saying rather than trying to figure out where you're going in the essay. The clearer you can be, the better. Include supporting details, again, as specific as possible. If it's too specific, you'll get feedback to let you know, but I've never really seen that as a problem. And make sure you always recall that purpose, why you're writing this. Go back to your overall overarching theme. And in your conclusion, you're just going to summarize those things again, bring it all together and have a concluding statement. There are lots of ways to organize yourself, whether you prefer the traditional outline on the right here, or if you're more visual and you want to do something a little bit more elaborate, like on the left. However you get organized is perfectly fine. Here's some other examples. Just make sure you spend the time before you write the essay to get this together so that you can focus on how to write it well instead of what to write or when to write it. There are a few different ways that you can write this essay. The most common one I will say is expository. Expository is like your standard essay type. You investigate an idea, you have evidence, you expand, all of that stuff. So the majority of you are probably going to use an expository essay, just your standard essay. But some of you may be more creative, or you like to tell stories, or you feel like your reason for being in this, applying to this program is so personal that you have to tell it in story form. That's when the narrative essay style comes in. This is very descriptive. It tells a story. It's anecdotal. It's got a lot of details in it about yourself. It can be a way to incorporate humor, and it can be an easy way to make it about you personally. That said, if you aren't someone who writes well in a narrative form or who likes to tell stories, don't try to make the style fit you where it doesn't. It's okay to write expository. There's no advantage of one over the other. It's more about what speaks to you most and what you feel like best fits what you have to say. So as I said before, the people reading personal statements, they're reading a lot of them. So how do you stand out? How are you going to make yourself memorable? Well, the first thing you can do is write well. You don't want to be memorable for using really, text speech or being all over the place with your grammar. Use the proper grammar and spelling. Be specific and succinct. A lot of us tend to flourish when we write, talk a lot about around something before talking into it. Academic writing actually kind of encourages this. Have you ever written a 5-page paper that you thought you could write in 2 pages? That is probably something that you will be at an advantage for with personal statements, because you want to get it down to those 2 pages or that 1 page. So be specific. Just go right out and say it. You don't have to talk around it. And avoid cliches and generalities. This is something like I've wanted to be a doctor since I was 5 years old, or as a runner in our track team, my academic career has been like a marathon. Sometimes that can work, but if it's too overworked, if it's too common of a theme and it just sounds generic, it might be best to go at it from a different angle. It's okay to be honest, and it's okay to be personal. Only be as honest or as personal as you're comfortable, and only as much as it is relevant. But this is a time for you to express yourself. When admissions committees are looking for applicants to admit or to award a scholarship to, they already have all the numbers. They've got your GPA, they've got your transcripts, they've got, if you're applying to grad school, your GRE or your MCAT or your LSAT score, GMAT, whatever. Everyone's numbers kind of look the same after a while. So the personal statement is about who you are as a person. They don't want to hire a number. They don't want to bring on a number or give an award to a number. They want to give it to a person. So make sure you put yourself in there. You might want to use a theme. If there was like, this is kind of like the running theme, or some people have used being a team captain on an athletic team. Or there's some others that I'm not thinking of right now. You can use a theme and kind of, incorporate this throughout your essay, and that can work really well for you. You might develop an analogy. So you might talk about, river, fishing, if you want to use fishing as an analogy. You can do this and be successful. I just urge you to have caution, because this is one of the ways where you can too easily fall into cliches. So if you're going to use a theme, just make sure it's important for your essay and it really helps to convey what it is you want to say. Kind of already went into this a little bit, but if you want to read that. Yeah, the other thing with a theme is it can be more difficult to make sure you're truly addressing the prompt. So you have to be very, very organized when you're using a theme. Use assertive or active language. So if you've ever written an academic paper, or specifically a research paper, you know that you're never supposed to say the word I. I think a lot of writing classes are like, don't use I, always use, like the researcher did this, or the methods that were used were XYZ. This is a very passive way of speaking, and that's fine for those papers, but for your personal statement, you do not want to be passive. You want to use a lot of assertive and active language. Some examples, instead of saying, I had the opportunity to intern at, or I was blessed to be able to, I see that one a lot. You didn't have the opportunity, you did it. So I interned at this place. You weren't able to learn about something, you did learn about it. And this one's especially important. I believe I'm a strong candidate because. Just cut out the I believe. Be confident about it. Own it. I am a strong candidate for these reasons. A lot of times when people speak like this, they're afraid that they sound arrogant. Well, the personal statement isn't the place to be humble. So go ahead and own the things that you've done. Be proud of them. Know that they're relevant, and use that active language. This is one of my favorite things to tell people, write in business casual. Again, it's not an academic paper and you should use I, but what I want you to avoid is writing too academically or professionally, trying to sound very formal, which is something you might do in like a cover letter. You want to write this more as if you were speaking to someone, as if you were having a conversation, talking to a mentor, a professor you like, or even a peer, a friend, about what you want to do and why you really care. You can even record yourself talking about it and answering a few questions, and then write your essay based on that. I encourage anything that helps you write as if you're speaking. And the reason I say this is it's a lot easier to take an informal essay that you've written this way and make it sound a little more professional than it is to inject personality into an overly professional and sort of cold essay. So don't be afraid to just, write business casual. Don't use text speech or anything like that. Use proper grammar, but write how you would talk. That's perfectly fine here, and sometimes often works to your advantage. So I wanted to go through some examples, because a lot of these things, when you talk about them, it's hard to conceptualize what it looks like. So I pulled out a few examples. I'm going to kind of read through them and talk about what I see in those paragraphs and ways that you could change it. So this first one here, when I volunteered with Habitat for Humanity in Haiti, my eyes were opened and my worldview expanded. Until that point, I had only heard about the destruction caused by the earthquake years earlier. Although pictures and newspaper stories about the aftermath are what compelled me to volunteer, it was not until I saw the plight and chaos of the Haitian people's living conditions that I developed a greater sense of compassion for their strife. So this really isn't that bad. It's personal. They talk about it well and succinctly, but there are ways to make it a lot better. So I talked about passive voice. My eyes were opened and my worldview expanded. Instead of saying that, you can say, I became more aware of the differences in life in Haiti versus what I'm used to, or, you know, something that starts with I instead of something that happened to you, something that you learned, or something that you experienced. So up until that point, I'd only heard about the destruction. Although pictures and newspapers were compelled me to volunteer, it wasn't until I saw it. So what pictures did you see? What was it that suddenly changed your mind? Were there pictures of families in destitute conditions? What were the stories about? Be more specific there, because you, in the same way that you're saying it wasn't until you saw pictures and newspapers stories that compelled you to be interested, your reader isn't going to have that same interest unless you describe some of those personal things that happened or that you experienced through this journey. So this next one here is a sort of revised way of writing it, and this is more of a narrative style, so it completely shifted there, but this is just another way to see how you can write about the same thing. Haiti was hot and humid, no surprise, but for a native Canadian like me, waking up to 90-degree weather and 95% humidity initially felt impossible to bear. It didn't take long, however, for me to reflect and realize that my discomfort paled in comparison to the destruction and emotional suffering experienced by the Haitian people. So I'll stop there for a second. And right away, you're talking about how hot it is, how humid it is, you know, your own discomfort, and then also realizing that that was nothing compared to what was going on here. So you're inserting yourself very, you know, very much into the location, and you're inserting the reader there as well. It's automatically more personal in that way. Although pictures and newspaper stories about the earthquake's aftermath compelled me to volunteer, actually interacting with locals like 8-year-old Emmanuel, who cried tears of joy as we unveiled his rebuilt home, taught me that lifting people's spirits was just as important as improving their physical conditions. So this is where I say, be specific. Talk about actual anecdotes. This person talks about a boy named Emmanuel and his you know, having his home rebuilt. That's where you really get the reader interested in wanting to continue reading about your story. So use those details. Use real life examples. I'm interested in studying a law degree. I'll stop there. You're not studying a law degree, you're studying law, or you're earning a law degree. So be careful with those phrases. After attending the local courts to observe law in action, I was intrigued by the roles of the different advocates for the defense and prosecution and the position of the defendant in the process. That doesn't really tell me about what really intrigued you. What about the roles of the defense and the prosecution intrigued you? How were they different? What did you observe? What was the position of the defendant? How did they work in the court? So those generics are just kind of not memorable. But if you get into more detail, that's helpful. Following the experiences of observing cases, I believe my experience of ethics study and further philosophical underpinnings of religious studies have given me the understanding of the issues of morality, justice, moral positions, and ethical solutions within society. I am enthusiastic about studying law at university. Okay, so I believe my experience of ethics study, etc. No, my experience of ethics study has given me the understanding. So go ahead and make that active. I would hope that it seems like this might be a introductory paragraph, so I would hope you talk more about the issues of morality, justice, and moral positions in the coming paragraphs. So that's why I included the next paragraph. So he talks about, in studying ethics, I have been particularly interested in ethical theories like utilitarianism and situation ethics, which all attempt to answer ethical dilemmas and create a basis for ethical decision-making. So this is great. He automatically named some actual ethical theories. He's talking about what they do a little bit, giving that introduction, though I would be concerned about utilitarianism being capitalized and then situation and ethics being an inconsistent capitalization. But that's just grammar, right? This has given me an interest in ethical solutions, which is why I wanted to study law. So that statement is sort of, it doesn't really tell us much. You know, why did it make you interested in ethical solutions? What were some of the things that you studied that made you think about this? How did you start connecting it to law? So further in my studies of RS, which I see as religious studies, I have recognized the importance of understanding different cultures, belief systems, and historically important figures, and he goes on to name those. Why is it important? What in your studies made you come across these belief systems? What about Aristotle and Karl Marx? Don't just name drop. make sure you say, you have it shown why you're naming these people. These are just examples of ways that you want to dig deeper and get more details. All right, one last example. I'm part of an economy that influences societies in ways I am yet to discover. There's some grammatical issues here, but generally the idea is okay. I see economics as a ubiquitous subject that's altered the way I view the world. I'm not really sure what they're trying to say here. Maybe some rewording would help. After studying economics, I was able to see a lot of things in a different light, and then you can expand upon that. So he says, I'd look at mundane objects and wonder about the economic value of such goods. It just doesn't feel like a person wrote this. I wouldn't expect someone to walk around and look at a water fountain and suddenly be like, I wonder what the economic value of that good is. Like, that's not a personal story. It's trying to make it sound personal when it's not. I want to hear more about this actual person behind the essay. This initial thought process was developed through Undercover Economist. That's passive again. My thought process was developed. How about after reading the Undercover Economist, or through reading the Undercover Economist, I began to think about things differently, and this is how I thought about them. Active voice. He uses it in the next sentence. I'm intrigued by the interconnectivity of the world and how societies use scarce resources to produce goods to be distributed among the world. That's a good sentence. I kind of would have liked that to be the introductory sentence. It's the strongest sentence I'd see in there, because he talks about what actually he cares about with economics. The interconnectivity, use of resources, distribution of resources. Tell me more, right? That's what you want your first sentence to invoke in a reader. The sheer beauty of economics embodies my passion in using economic concepts to provide theories explaining global situations. This is close. This is close to what I want from a personal description. But he says the sheer beauty of economics. What is that? What is that to this writer? I don't know. I would rather them explain that and explain why they're passionate about it, rather than saying that this thing yet to be defined embodies my passion. And I think some of the difficulties is that this writer and the other examples we've seen are that they're trying to write very academically, very formally, and it results in these sort of sentence structures that are vague and weirdly phrased. Like, if you say it aloud, it just sounds strange. So again, write how you'd speak if you'd never say to someone, the sheer beauty of not economics fascinates me. Maybe you would. If so, write it. But if you wouldn't say that, don't put it in your personal statement. It's not going to do you any favors. But like any academic writing or any other type of writing, you do want to draft and revise it multiple times. And when you do this, seek input. And from a lot of different sources, both people who know you and people who don't know you at all. So ask your friends to read it. Ask your professors or instructors to read it. I will read it for you. I can give you feedback. I'll look at multiple drafts. The folks in the Center for Career and Professional Development are also willing to read personal statements. And there are writing tutors in the Academic Resource Center that will read essays, including personal statements, and give you feedback. All of these are great sources, not just pick one or two. You might want to use all of them, because the more feedback you get, the better. And then you can pick and choose what feels most relevant to you and most important to you, and then redraft your essay to include that. So to sum it all up, spend time really reflecting on your reasons and your experiences. Ask yourself why a few times. I did this with my UNV class. Why are you in college? Well, I want to be able to get a good job. Why do you want to get a good job? I want to be able to be financially stable to support my family. Okay. Why do you want to support your family? Family is really important to me for these reasons, and I want to be a part of a community. So suddenly, they're not just going to college to get a job. They're going to college because they want to have a family, and family's important to them for a lot of different reasons. That's a lot more in depth. So even just asking yourself why way too many times as if you were a toddler, that can be really helpful into getting more insight in what you're really after. Treat it as any other essay, review it, set it aside, review it again, get more feedback, write, edit, get feedback. I can't say that one enough because it's really important. We get really attached to what we're writing, especially when it's about ourselves. So we overlook things, and we often do some explaining in our head so that we understand what we're trying to say, but it might not come across to other readers. So make sure you don't do this on your own. Get some feedback. So that's what I have for you. If you have any questions, now is the time to do that, to ask them. I wanted to let you know that I do individual appointments. You can sign up for those on Starfish, which you can access on my Mercer. We can have appointments to talk about an outline or to sort of brainstorm and talk aloud about what your personal statement essay might include. And you can also email me your drafts, and that's my email there as well. I usually am happy to review 2 or 3 drafts, and I take a few days to a week, depending on how many of you all send me your personal statements, to give you that feedback on your essay.